My best friend framed me for a crime, so I exposed him. My best friend Jake stared across the table at me, barely concealing a grin. The detective slid a blurry surveillance photo toward me, a still from last night's robbery. My face was all over it. The cops had it pointed at me, the suspect. Me. My chest slammed against my ribs and I started gasping. What was happening? I glanced at Jake again. He sat there like this was just another Tuesday. He was practically hugging the detective, holding that same easy smile as if we were joking around. My heart started banging in my chest, like I had just run a marathon. My mind was blank except for one thought. How could this be real? I felt sweat pool at my hairline as betrayal coursed through me like ice water. Jake wasn't just any friend. He was like a brother to me. I had shared everything with him. How could he do this to me? I remember my hands trembling as the detective rattled off the list of charges: breaking and entering, theft, assault. My mouth went dry. What? No, this has to be a mistake, I managed to croak out, but Jake just smiled. The detective's eyes flicked to him for a moment, then back at me. Jake still looked calm, friendly, like he was backing me up, not destroying me. Why was he smiling? Did he know something I didn't? My mind raced. I had lived with Jake for years, trusted him with everything, and now I was sitting here like a criminal while he just sat there grinning. I felt a wave of panic rise in me. My mind was clamoring for answers that didn't come. The detective gave me a look that said I had no choice but to come with him. It felt like the ground was slipping away beneath me. I was frozen, staring at Jake and wondering how badly I had been betrayed. Jake and I met in high school. We were both kids who felt out of place. I was quiet and studious. He was loud and jokey. But somehow, we clicked. For example, in algebra class, whenever the teacher wrote a complicated problem, Jake would lean over and whisper, "Hey, you think we're going to need a bigger calculator for this?" And I'd snort so hard I almost spit out my soda. He kept things fun. We spent a lot of time after school doing stuff together. I still remember the time we camped out overnight on the football field trying to watch shooting stars. The sparkler I brought for light ended up setting off the sprinklers, and we got soaked and yelled at by the coach. Jake just laughed and said, "Well, that's one way to earn extra swim practice." He was always joking around like that, making even the dumbest situations feel fun. By our senior year, we were like brothers, inseparable. He teased me about everything: my braces, my lunchbox, my terrible cooking attempts. But he also had my back. Once a freshman bullied me about my glasses, and Jake jumped in, mock saluting with an old ruler and shouting, "Nobody messes with my friend on my watch." The other kids scrambled away, and Jake gave me a grin. Moments like that showed me he was solid. He would stick up for me, no matter what. After high school, I moved to Dallas for college, and Jake came along. We rented the smallest apartment we could find, which basically meant 2 college kids and one lazy black cat named Pixel sharing very little space. The place was kind of a madhouse. My side was stacked with engineering textbooks and my beat-up laptop, while Jake's side looked like a mini arcade. Comic books, game controllers, and action figures piled everywhere. Those years felt surprisingly fun. Every evening I'd come home from class to find Jake passed out on our sagging couch, controller in hand. He'd wake up just long enough to grin and say, "Dude, get your butt here, we've got a new game marathon." Or sometimes come over with 2 cups of coffee after a late-night project binge. One time I spilled some coffee on his halo of empty energy drink cans, and he freaked out like it was a sacrilege, and we both nearly peed ourselves laughing. We even got matching neon socks for the apartment. It was a joke at first, but now whenever one of us saw the other without them, we'd howl about breaking the bro code. Those weekends of exploring the city, or doing lazy movie marathons on the couch with Pixel snuggled between us always felt effortless. With Jake around, every little disaster or everyday chore became an inside joke. During that time, I started dating Amanda, a girl from my literature class, and Jake couldn't have been more proud. He started teasing me in that friendly way he had. If I got nervous before a date, he'd elbow me and whisper, "You got this, buddy. Just be the nerdy sweetheart we all love." After one date, he grinned at me and said, "She's a keeper, man. Don't mess this up." Jake even cracked jokes to break the ice. I remember him photobombing a selfie Amanda and I were taking by making a ridiculous face with popcorn in his mouth. We both burst out laughing, and Amanda said it was the funniest thing she had ever seen. He turned romantic moments into a clown show in the best way possible. He had a gift for making things goofy and comfortable. The three of us quickly became inseparable. We had movie nights. Jake would howl at every funny line and scare us during the spooky parts. Midnight taco runs, where Jake always had to try every hot sauce flavor as if he was in a daredevil contest. And gaming marathons. Everything felt fun, like our own sitcom where the three lead characters were just goofing off together. He teased me that I was the luckiest nerd alive for landing Amanda and gave me a serious wink nod when I had doubts, saying, "Don't screw this up, pal." Jake introduced us properly on Monday. He walked in with Lisa beside him, both grinning. Lisa was a psychology student, and she smiled warmly as I stuck out my hand. "Hi, Michael," she said quietly. "I've heard so much about you." I was surprised. Lisa said she had read about my tech project online and thought it sounded cool. I chuckled in disbelief and thanked her, and found myself liking her instantly. She wasn't shy in a way that made me nervous. She just had this calm, kind way about her. It felt weirdly normal, like we'd known each other longer than a few minutes. We talked about everything and nothing. Upcoming exams, favorite movies, and how Jake and I had once tried, and horribly failed, to cook spaghetti together on a camping trip. Lisa laughed at our stories and even teased Jake a little, proving she fit right into the dynamic. By the time we finished eating, I realized that our little group had just gotten one person bigger, and it felt natural. Jake was beaming, proud to have his two best friends together. It was like he was forming the extended family he always wanted, and I was in it. Everything clicked into place that night. It felt like he'd been keeping this big part of his life secret, and now that secret was mine too. Soon, the three of us were hanging out all the time. After my shifts, we'd grab late-night burgers and laugh about the dumbest things, Jake's new clumsy dance moves, or the fact that I could never master a decent salsa mix. One night we even built a terrible couch fort to watch movies, and Pixel barged in as if she was the apartment guard. Lisa fit right in with our gang. She had a laugh that was bright, and a voice so warm it felt like a comfort. It felt like life had just added a new character to our story, and I was thankful. With Amanda nearby or not, my routine hadn't really changed. Jake and I still played video games and argued over the best Marvel movie, and now Lisa would tease us both and referee our silly debates. In those moments, I really believed nothing was wrong. Just friends enjoying college life. Everything felt normal and fun when we were together. I guess I missed the first warning signs. Over the next few weeks, small weird things started happening. Jake began staying out later and later, just saying he was hanging out with coworkers. One time I came home early and found him on his phone in the dark. He quickly hung up and shrugged it off. But I felt tension everywhere. He started locking the bathroom door, something he'd never done before, and slipping out at odd hours for phone calls as if he didn't want me to know. Even small stuff changed. I noticed a random $800 deposit in my bank account one morning. He said it must have been a mistake by the bank. I laughed it off. Free money is free money, right? But Jake didn't look pleased. He just whispered, "Be careful with that," and walked away. He was snapping at jokes I told, too. Normally I would tease him about anything, but now he bristled if I mentioned certain things. At the time, I shrugged all this off. Jake was working 2 store shifts, having to cover extra hours, and planning that trip to Vegas to celebrate our good news. Maybe he was just stressed and preoccupied. In the back of my mind, I had an uneasy feeling, but I shoved it away. We still had Amanda, Lisa, and our silly nights together. What could possibly be wrong? Then Monday came around, the day that finally felt like a win. I received the call that I passed the interview and got the senior developer position. I couldn't stop grinning. I ran to the apartment and burst in without knocking, expecting the same excitement from Jake. "Jake, I got it!" I shouted. For a split second, he looked genuinely surprised, and I felt relief wash over me. But then he quickly covered the phone and forced out a, "That's awesome, dude," while Lisa murmured congratulations in the background. He clapped me on the back and told me he'd celebrate with me later that week. I nodded, saying I was already thinking about dinner and pizza to celebrate. He smiled weakly and said he was glad. But inside I felt an awkward tug. He wasn't exactly thrilled. His eyes had this strange look to them. He saw me grinning like a fool and said quietly, "Congrats, by the way," almost under his breath. Then he slapped my back like our casual moment was over. As Jake pushed past me out the door, he hesitated and added, "By the way, don't forget, you're closing the store this Wednesday night. I'll be at the other store, okay?" He sounded like he was changing the subject quickly, like he wanted to get out of there. I said, "Right, got it." But inside I was confused. He gave me a quick smile and left. I stood in the doorway staring after him with a weird knot in my throat. Something didn't feel right at all. Wednesday started like any other day, surprisingly quiet. It was cool out, and I drove to my office early, feeling a little on top of the world. I was still buzzing from the promotion news. Around 10 a.m., my boss stopped me in the hallway. "Hey, Mr. Senior Dev," he teased. "We just need you to swing by one site real quick and sign off on some paperwork." "New fiber line run, you know," I agreed, thinking it would only take a few minutes. After lunch, I made my way downtown to the construction site. Sure enough, it was only a block from that new Quick Mart store Jake had been talking about. I did my inspection, signed the last piece of paper, and at that moment a thought occurred to me. Maybe I could swing by and see Jake later. But then it hit me. I was supposed to be closing the old store on Elm Street that night. My stomach sank. I should have told him earlier that I'd be late. I jumped into my car and immediately called Jake. When he answered, I tried to sound casual. "Hey man, the inspection took longer than I thought," I said. "Looks like I'm running a couple of hours late for closing. Can you cover the store till I get back? I owe you one." His silence was heavy on the line. I could almost see him frowning. Finally, he asked quietly, "You sure?" My heart sank a little. "Yeah, the site needed those signatures done tonight. I'm sorry about this." There was a pause. Then he said, "Okay, fine. I got it covered. Be safe, all right?" "Thanks, Jake. I really appreciate it," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. But inside I was uneasy. Why did he sound so upset? He hung up after that, and I drove off with the radio muted and a pit in my stomach, wondering if I had pushed my friend too hard. I thanked my boss for understanding at the end of the day and went to collect my things. It was around 11:30 p.m. when I decided to swing by the new Quick Mart store anyway. I wanted to thank Jake and Lisa in person, maybe share a victory pizza slice. When I pulled into the parking lot, everything was dark. The store lights were off, the door locked, and a sign on the door read, "Closed for inventory." My heart skipped a beat. We never closed that early on a Wednesday. I stepped out of the car and looked at the sign again. It had been taped on hastily. The lot was completely empty except for a trash bin. "Jake?" I called softly, feeling foolish. My footsteps echoed as I walked toward the door. "Jake? Lisa?" I knocked but got no answer. My voice was louder this time. No response. I pressed my face against the window. The store was empty. Pixel, our cat, would have been roaming the aisles if I had been here as usual. Fear started to creep in. I got back into my car and tried calling Jake again. Straight to voicemail. I started redialing as my mind raced through possibilities. Had something happened to him? Why would the store be closed? This was wrong. Very wrong. Panicking, I decided to call Lisa. When she answered, I could hear the dread in her sleepy voice. "Hey, are you guys okay? The store is closed and I'm here alone," I blurted. Lisa's voice wavered. "Jake is supposed to be here, but I'm still at home." "This isn't normal," I could hear her pacing. "He was at my place preparing for you to show up, then I fell asleep. I guess he said he'd meet me there. But Michael, the store's closed?" My blood ran cold. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. There was no way this was okay. Images of Jake behind that counter holding the bags of money flashed through my mind. Something was very wrong. Worry turned into alarm. I quickly drove to the other Quick Mart on Elm Street, the one Jake used to work at. It was just around the corner. But when I got there, the front door was locked and dark too. This couldn't be happening. I hit speed dial for 911 before I even realized it. Officer Ramirez answered on the second ring. He didn't even say hi. "Mr. Thompson," he said, "we have a situation. There was a robbery at the Elm Street Quick Mart last night, and our cameras got a very clear image of the guy who did it. The thing is, that guy looks a lot like you." My head stopped. "What?" "No, I wasn't even there last night," I stammered. "That must be someone else." There was a pause. Then Ramirez's voice came again, colder. "The footage shows the suspect was wearing your company hat and jacket. We've matched ID and everything. Please come to the station immediately." My body froze. I could barely hear the rest of what he was saying. They thought it was me. They had evidence. I drove to the station as if through fog. When I got there, 2 detectives escorted me into the booking area. The next few minutes were a blur. They asked my name, birth date, address, all questions I'd answered 1,000 times before, but now every answer felt like I was handing over a piece of myself under a microscope. They clicked a mugshot. Flash. They took my fingerprints and swabbed my hands for gunpowder residues. Everything about the process felt grim and surreal. Finally, they locked me in a holding cell, flipped on a tiny light above the door, and left. The room was cold and echoing with silence. I sat on the metal bench, hugging my knees. My whole body shook, part panic, part cold. Images of Jake's grin and that photo they'd shown me kept replaying in my head. How could my life have ended up like this? I was in a daze all night. In that cold, empty holding room, I tried to let reality sink in. I had been arrested, branded a criminal. My own friend had testified against me with a handful of stolen cash. None of it made sense. There was nowhere to run here. I had to face whatever came next. Eventually, I must have dozed on the bench. When I woke before dawn, the sun's first rays were coming through the tiny window. My phone was buzzing with missed calls from an unknown number, Ramirez, no doubt, and Lisa texting frantically, asking if I was okay. I finally stood up and brushed myself off. Fear was still there, but the adrenaline and anger had settled into something colder. Determination. I needed to prove my innocence, no matter what it took. Dawn was breaking when I finally saw Jake. He strode into the holding area with our lawyer in tow. For a second I stared at him, feeling every emotion at once. He gave me a quick hug and whispered, "Everything's gonna be okay, Mike." It was surreal. Our lawyer sat me down and started scribbling some paperwork. All I could do was sit on that hard bench and shake. Then, somehow, Jake seemed normal again. He cracked a half smile and handed me something. It was my own blue leather wallet, battered and empty, just sitting on his palm. I stared at it. "How did you get this?" I asked. He just shrugged and said quietly, "Found it at the scene." It's evidence. He watched me, sizing up my reaction. My throat went dry again. I felt sick reading this evidence. Jake looked into my eyes, and for a moment, I thought I saw remorse. Then he just gave me a quick, tight-lipped smile. "I'll go talk to them," he said quietly. "They want to ask you some questions. Stay put, okay?" He patted me on the shoulder. "Everything will be fine, Mike." He turned and walked out with our lawyer. I heard the cell door clang shut behind him. Alone again, I felt a burning anger mix with the fear in my chest. Betrayal stung fresh in my mind. How could he just stand there and hand me evidence that ruined my life, then walk away like it was no big deal? I was in a daze all night. In that cold, empty holding room, I tried to let reality sink in. I had been arrested, branded a criminal. My own friend had testified against me with a handful of stolen cash. None of it made sense. There was nowhere to run here. I had to face whatever came next. Eventually, I must have dozed on the bench. When I woke before dawn, the sun's first rays were coming through the tiny window. My phone was buzzing with missed calls from an unknown number, Ramirez, no doubt, and Lisa texting frantically, asking if I was okay. I finally stood up and brushed myself off. Fear was still there, but the adrenaline and anger had settled into something colder. Determination. I needed to prove my innocence, no matter what it took. I walked out of that station feeling numb, but I knew I couldn't do nothing. I had to find proof. Back at my apartment, I immediately looked through my bank app. There, clear as day, was the deposit of $800 labeled Quick Mart Refund. My hands nearly dropped. Who puts $800 into a random account by mistake? In a flash, I remembered a voicemail I hadn't checked. I dialed my phone. Sure enough, at 2:05 a.m. the night of the robbery, I had a message. Jake's voice was on it, slurred and urgent. "Michael, it's me. Call me," he was saying, clearly panicked about something. I replayed it until my ears rang. I realized he had phoned me after the robbery. He was taunting me without saying it. That was it. I needed undeniable proof to clear my name. If the police weren't helping, I'd have to help myself. And if he had really done this, I would expose him. Before dawn, I booked a one-way flight to Las Vegas under a fake name. Jake loved gambling and always talked about Vegas. It was the one place he acted lucky. I was going to find him and get him to admit what he'd done. That evening in Vegas, I started chasing shadows. By late night, I found him, at a poker table in the Mirage, deep in conversation with Sam, a guy who used to work mornings at Quick Mart. They were poring over a stack of cash and chips. Sam was grinning ear to ear. Jake had that smug look. I hung back near a slot machine and watched. Jake pulled out his phone and opened a banking app. He was transferring money right in front of me. He tapped the cash pile and muttered, "Michael still has no clue." I couldn't believe it. Suddenly, he looked up and locked eyes with me. For a second, I thought he'd faint. "What the hell are you doing here?" he hissed as I walked over. My heart pounded in my ears, but I forced a smile. "Vegas is nice this time of year," I said casually. His face turned deadly calm. Jake's eyes went ice cold. I took a steady step closer and said, "Looks like we found our culprit." He glared. "What are you talking about?" "You and I both know," I said. Jake clenched his fists. He gave me a pit bull grin and lunged at me. I caught his arm just in time. We stumbled into a nearby table of chips. Sam yelled something from behind. I pulled out my phone and hit record. "Tell me what happened tonight, Jake," I said calmly into the camera. He froze when he realized I was filming. His expression turned frantic. "Fine," he snapped, spitting out his words. "Meet me outside." Outside, in the cool night air, we were face to face. Jake was pacing like a cornered animal. Sam stood back, wide-eyed. I continued recording. "Okay," he spat. "I'll tell you, you little rat." He started pacing. "I needed cash. Everyone moves on except me, remember? I lost everything. When I found out about the promotion, I flipped. I thought framing you would solve it. I knew they'd believe you instead of me." His voice cracked. I thought, they're better off without me. He looked shaken, and tears welled up in his eyes. I'm sorry, he whispered. I didn't know what else to do. The admission was twisted with shame. Even he looked broken. By that time, the sound of sirens wailing drew near. We both froze. Sam panicked and vanished into the casino crowd. 2 uniformed officers ran toward us. One of them was the same detective who'd arrested me earlier. They took one look at Jake's face and sprinted after him. In an instant, it happened. One officer threw himself at Jake as he tried to turn and run. We had 2 officers wrestling him on the sidewalk by the time I lowered my phone. I reached out to the detective and handed him my phone, breathless. On it was the entire conversation, clear as day. There was no question now. Jake was pulled to his feet, his face streaked with sweat and shame. As they cuffed him, he locked eyes with me one more time and mouthed, "I'm sorry." I just nodded numbly. The officers read him his rights and led him away. I felt strangely calm, even relieved. After months of fear and uncertainty, it was finally over. I sat back on a bench outside the casino, breathing in the cold night air, the aftershocks of adrenaline starting to fade. It felt surreal. Jake was gone, cuffed into a police car, and everything happened exactly as I needed it to. By morning, I walked into a police office in Dallas and gave my statement. Ramirez and the others showed me the video on their computers. They were stunned. My innocence was now beyond doubt. By noon, the charges against me were dropped, and I was free to go. I went home, where the evidence on my phone was played over and over for the authorities, including the company I worked for. They apologized profusely, admitting they never expected their star developer to be the victim of such a setup. My promotion was reinstated, and I even got a bonus and an apology letter from HR. Lisa rushed to hug me when she found out I was okay. Amanda stayed by my side through the entire ordeal. They told me they never doubted I was innocent. The authorities still had to sort out Jake's case, but the chapter with me being the suspect was closed forever. I spent the next few weeks picking up the pieces. I went back to work, and it was oddly satisfying to see everyone treat me like a hero who'd been through a nightmare, rather than a criminal. Some people even shared sympathy stories about misunderstandings with friends or trouble at work, trying to make me feel better. I appreciated that. For weeks after it was all over, I had trouble sleeping. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw flashes of that mugshot on the screen, or replayed Jake's smug smile. It was like a twisted nightmare I couldn't shake. I had dreams where I was locked up again, or where Jake was just standing there, accusing me silently. Gradually, things started to settle. My boss pulled me aside one afternoon and said, "We're glad to have you back. And hey, the promotion is still yours." Lisa checked in on me constantly. Amanda stuck by me through every phone call and court date that came after. Their support helped more than I can say. I also took up long runs at night around the neighborhood just to burn off the adrenaline and clear my head. It helped, a little, to let out the tension. I won't lie, it still hurts that my best friend betrayed me. There are days when I wonder how someone I trusted with everything could stoop so low. It probably will hurt for a long time. But I also know this: the truth came out, and justice happened. I've become more cautious about who I trust, but I haven't let the fear stop me from living. If I could say one thing now, it would be this: be thankful for the people who truly have your back. I lost someone I once considered a brother, and that's something I will carry forever. But I also proved something important. I will not let myself be a victim. I exposed the truth, reclaimed my life, and learned to trust again. Carefully this time.